back to another episode of COVID-19 from Crisis to Creation here on Mentor TV. I'm your host, Patricia Falco Beccalli. Well, I thought today we're going to look at the fintech industry. The fintech industry, technology, digitalization, how important is it in our life? And to what extent did the COVID-19 crisis impact that specific sector? Positively, negatively. It is a huge industry. New investments every year are around about 130, 140 billion US dollars. And one of the most dynamic markets in terms of investment inflows in the world is Israel. So I thought, why not taking a bit of a closer look at what is happening there and what the future may bring also coming out of Israel. And in order to bring you all those details and this wisdom is Nir Netzer. Nir, thank you very much for joining me here on Mentor TV.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Well, a couple of words to you or about you. Not only are you an absolute, whiz kid when it comes to the fintech industry, but you also are a founding partner of Equitech Group. It's a global fintech advisory firm. So you do have the research, you do have the numbers, you do have the trends you can share with us. And also you're the chair of Fintech Aviv. And it's amazing because there are quite a few fintech associations in the world. However, this is amongst the biggest, if not the biggest community with over 8,000 members.
Correct. Thank you for that, Patricia. Yeah, actually, Fintech Aviv is the Israeli Fintech Association. Was established 6 years ago, a bit more than this even. We have more than 8,000 members, and yeah, that makes us one of the biggest fintech associations or fintech communities around the globe. Of course, we're in touch with bunch of fintech associations around the globe, and our purpose is basically to support the Israeli export or the export of Israeli technologies to support the growth of Israeli fintech, and of course to support and to bring to more integrations and to more investments into Israeli fintech. So that's what we do.
And I think I'm going to launch and confront you right now with a screen share. I hope, Nir, it's going to happen and you're going to see it, because I think that will be something that really plays out a little bit the entire industry to anybody that is not necessarily into it. And this is this screen. I'm going to share it right now. Can you see it?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, the focus is on Israel because it has some growth dynamic going for itself. I was stunned to see the figures since 2017. I think yearly dynamic of investment growth is, I think, 111%. So it's big. The Cybersecurity and FinTech Hub in Israel, and that is a study coming out from KPMG. It's in their latest survey, really taking the pulse of the industry at the, I think it was the last quarter of 2019. With a population of just over 8.2 million, Israel enjoys the highest density of startups, venture capital investment, and largest R&D spending per capita in the world. Of Israel's GDP, 20% is generated by the high-tech industry, with more than 8,500 companies and 35 global R&D centers. Google, Facebook, Intel, Microsoft are all among the 300 multinationals to open branches in Israel and claim that the key to success lies with the country's local talent. Nir, you're one of those local talents. Give me your take on this very complimentary line coming through from KPMG.
So yeah, first of all, I love these reports by KPMG. I told you that before. I think they're very informative and really insightful. And this is totally true. I mean, Israel is ranked second in the world in investments per capita in fintech. It's an amazing fact. Imagine that. First in the world is the UK. Israel is second in the world for investment per capita, and then the US market. Fourth is, by the way, Singapore. So we see Israel is tracking a lot of capital, foreign capital actually. 73% out of the capital that is invested in Israel is coming from foreign investors. And we see that Israeli is a tech powerhouse, fintech powerhouse, cybersecurity powerhouse, but it's not a capital market. We're tracking investments from the outside, and we're basically supporting in the export of technology. That's what we do. So yeah, I love this report. So just to,
Yeah, well, of course, if it shows Israel being, one of the hubs. And I wonder, what is the secret? Tell us the story about the fintech development and becoming this hub. But that doesn't happen from one day to the next. Technology development, innovation, disruption, and having all this capital really flowing into a country which, in comparison to other, players in the world, like the US or here's some individual countries in Europe, is just unrivaled.
Yeah, so there's the book Startup Nation, of course. I think that most of us tech savvies have read it, and it mentions many facts about Israel. And one of the facts that's mentioned there about cultivating a entrepreneurial culture or entrepreneurial spirit is coming from maybe maybe even from the army, or from the way that we behave in situations that we're under pressure. When we are enforced to take decisions, quick decisions, good decisions under pressure, when we're enforced to create ourselves from scratch, and basically when we're enforced to lead in such a young age, I think it supports quite in a very dominant way in the way that we manufacture entrepreneurs, if you want to call it like this. And I think that also the education, of course, the tech education in Israel is one of the best in the world. We have the Technion, we have different institutions that are supporting higher education, and of course, hands-on studies. If we talk about the army once again, so we see different units such as 8200 and different units that are focusing in cybersecurity, that are educating the generation of the future, basically, and generating tech stars. So I think this supports Israel as a tech nation in that way.
Yeah, and looking at the industry itself, I wonder, because I think a lot of people might not necessarily know what fintech is today, Nir, because fintech started, I think, back in the 1950s with the first Diners Club card, like a credit card, and then sometimes mid-70s, you started to have the ATMs. I think it was Barclays Bank actually introducing those. So I wonder, what is fintech today? It's so much more than credit cards, isn't it?
Of course. We see that fintech and, it's, first of all, it's an expanding definition, right? We have different sub-segments of fintech and it's expanding all the time. So if we saw PayPal back in the days, or D&H, which is now called Finastra, which are the maybe huge fintechs that are out there in the world. So we saw mainly the focus around payments, sometimes lending, but nowadays it's much more than this. Nowadays we're talking about insurtech that is part of fintech, about blockchain that is part of fintech, and capital markets and all kind of trading platforms and solutions such as these. We're talking about even cybersecurity as a sub-segment of fintech, because any solution that is designated to serve the financial industry, if it's banks, if it's insurance companies, investment houses, credit card bureaus, etc., any solutions that is serving these guys is definitely a fintech solution. So we can take authentication, anti-fraud, identity theft, identity management, or wealth tech. We can take underwriting or risk assessment solutions as subsegments of fintech or subsegments of even lending. So we see that fintech is a very broad definition. We can even take regtech and compliance under these subsegments. And some will say that even proptech, property technology, is becoming fintech. Now, if you want to think about it, think about the biggest companies in the world currently. So we have GAFA, right? We have Google, we have Amazon, we have Apple, we have Facebook. They're all into fintech in a way. They're all into payments. What about Google Pay? Of course, we have Apple Pay. Again, we have also the payment facilitation of Amazon, and we have Libra, the new cryptocurrency coined by Facebook.
Absolutely. We've got Alibaba, we've got WeChat, and all of those are platforms also for payments and financial exchanges.
Exactly. So we see that the big giants are becoming banks. They actually serving their clients also in the financial aspects. So anything that's related to financial planning, financial education, and financial services, any tool that can support this industry is a fintech company. In Israel, by the way, we have more than 700 fintech companies that are active. In the Israeli Fintech Association, we actually have mapped them all. In Equitech Group, in the consultancy level, on the consultancy level, we work with about 100 fintechs, supporting their efforts to reach out and to open new markets. And of course, this number is getting bigger every month.
And we're going to look at what the future holds in a minute. But I'm just wondering, you were talking about tech stars. There are quite a few tech stars coming out of Israel for sure. I get the feeling, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, I get the feeling that anything based on technology right now and security right now is actually very resilient, if not feeding off the current COVID-19 crisis. How do you see it?
So yeah, definitely. We see several sub-segments of fintech that are basically prospering thanks to COVID. So maybe it's not politically correct to say, but any cybersecurity technology is currently enjoying the current situation, because obviously cybersecurity attacks are also on the rise thanks to the fact that everything went online. So cybersecurity solutions, defensive solutions in general are on the rise, obviously. Any trading platform, capital market solutions, wealth management, or wealth tech, as we call it, every platform that is serving these subsegments is currently also on the rise. We see digital banking or digital wallet. Anything that will avoid us to use cash is currently also in a huge uplift. And we see all kinds of solutions that are messaging solutions, for example, applications such as Zoom, anything that will deliver us as users the opportunity to talk, and not in a frontal way, to basically keep on doing our usual businesses online. Everything in these segments is also on the rise.
Yeah, and I'm wondering whether this is going to be long term. Yeah, what do you think? If you had to look now into the future and say, okay, it's now in high demand because of the crisis, but we'll solve the crisis. It won't be such an issue anymore. People will touch money again. You know, they will meet again. There will be planes taking us to, you know, rubbing shoulders meetings. We were supposed to meet over Easter in Israel, the two of us, and here we are on Zoom instead. So is the impact you're seeing and potential flow of funds and development push going to be time limited, or do you think this is really something to stay for quite a few years?
I think, yes, I think it's going to stay. I think that people change the behavior for the medium range and for the long run as well. Because I think that the way that we conduct business nowadays is actually more efficient. If you'll take a look about, for example, okay, this meeting, we could have this meeting in an office. For this kind of interview, we could meet maybe in a studio, maybe in my office, in your office. We should expense a flight on it, a night in a hotel, etc., etc. But Zoom gave us the opportunity to conduct these kind of interviews from a distance. And obviously, I think it creates a great efficiency in the market. So it's a great opportunity for businessmen to conduct normally, almost normally, their day-to-day business, and to keep on rolling with what they have in mind, and still to save the cost. And I think it's going to stay. I think it's going to stay for the medium range and for the long run. Also, the using applications in different messaging apps, in different video, telecommunication, etc. And I think also the fact that everything has shifted a little bit online. For example, for the last 6 years, the Israeli Fintech Association is hosting conferences almost every month on different fintech topics. And our conferences are broadcast online. And that's fine, but it's not something we were proud of. It's something that used to serve our Facebook page audience maybe. But now it's the big thing. It's the biggest thing we can talk about. Now we have online events every month, and this is what we're promoting. We're going to keep running with the online events, and this creates actually digital assets that we're going to use in the future. So we weren't going to give up on the online effect. On the contrary, we're going to use it and adopt it and go with it for the long run.
I like that. Go with it for the long run. And I wonder exactly now, okay, so we do have the communication part. Perhaps we also have the payment part, the messaging part. But what other disruptive technological solutions do you think fintech will play more and more a role in the future?
So, we're now in the days that we're hardly touching machines, hardly touching each other. But if we take a look at the future of fintech for the long run, after the whole fuss will come a little bit. So we see that biometrics, for example, is a huge thing, okay? And we're not just talking about fingerprint stuff. We're talking about face recognition, high-end, top-notch solutions. So imagine yourself, you're going in the airport and everything is done seamlessly. You don't need to touch anything. You don't need to talk to anyone. No 2 meters rule or anything. You just need to walk. And everything is done automatically at the back end. And this is biometric security at its best. So it's not necessarily in the serve of the financial industry. Many industries are going to use biometrics, but obviously the authentication part and the identification part is clearly very, very important for the financial industry. Anything that's related to automation. So we see back-end processes, underwriting, for example. If you want to take a loan nowadays, and someone needs to see what's your financial state. In the US, it's very obvious for years now that you have a credit score. It's not the way it's done in many other countries. But nowadays, there are machines, AI-based technologies that helps the financial institution basically to evaluate the risk of giving you a loan and give you the right interest.
Well, that is taking us towards blockchain and smart contracts, though, which is in the realm of being established and implemented now more and more.
Right, but not necessarily. Blockchain can be a platform that, for example, an underwriter will use to underwrite its lenders in a better way. But not necessarily. I don't have to use the blockchain infrastructure in order to adopt this kind of auto underwriting solution. These solutions, by the way, are also indicating about on maybe greater efficiency in insurance, because any insurance policy is now, and of course, any insurance policy that you're now issuing, you need an underwriter that will evaluate the premium. So in that way, auto underwriting, AI-based underwriting is something that the world is now adopting. Yeah.
No, I think it's really, really important to see where the trends are going, because where the trends are going, the money is flowing. And if one is a potential investor or is just, even a B2C, a customer of these fintech solutions, the adoption is extremely important for any kind of innovation to then really fly and become a profitable business as well. Let me zoom it out a little bit at this point, Nir, if I may. And I wonder, apart from the talent that was also mentioned by the KPMG study, and also the money that is given in terms of education, supporting innovation in general, I'm looking at Israel. It belongs to Europe in that sense. However, it is close to a very conflicting, geographically speaking, conflicting areas. How come that still Israel, despite these sometimes insecurities, to say the least, or tensions in that area, the money is still flowing, big blue chip companies going there, setting up shops, putting their employees there?
So, I think that one of the reasons that we can indicate for the Israeli success in technology is actually our location. And, given that we don't have natural resources, we don't have diamonds or anything, or gold, or anything that you can mine from.
We just trade with diamonds, Ramat Gan,
Of course, but we don't find them in the ground in Israel. And no. It's not what we export. Actually, these are things we import. But what we can export is the brains. What we can export is the expertise, the know-how, the knowledge. And this is what we do. We develop in Israel many solutions. And of course, that the biggest companies in the world are setting their development centers here. Just recently, also JP Morgan has settled their development, their R&D center here in Israel. And in some cases, it's even happening next to universities. And then they attract the biggest minds, they onboard them as employees, they cultivate them, they nurture them, and eventually it pays off.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's much related to the proximity of Israel to different countries in the Middle East that we can't work with. So we're exporting to the rest of the world, and we're disregarding our location geographically.
And how are you going to make sure that this kind of innovation push and velocity in growth is going to continue?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. I think it's a big challenge. I think that associations such as Fintech Aviv and governmental support from any kind is super important for this goal. So, of course, that the Israeli chief scientist is supporting with non-dilutive grants in the Israeli economy in many ways. So many companies are receiving funds from the chief scientist in Israel, and sometimes these funds are not even loans. Sometimes they have all kinds of arrangements, and this supports the economy. This supports the export and the growth of this kind of companies, and I think it kind of one of the factors that are promising the maybe the growth of Israeli tech export.
And I'm really, really happy that you actually bring the government and how much a government can really shift the needle in terms of making its country or its region prosperous, or just being a positive outlier when it comes to developing any kind of industry. You know, Switzerland is trying to do that with being the crypto valley of the world. It is dragging on, even though there are funds, but the government, what's trying to be very helpful, is very much focused on what they can do, cannot do, should not do. But again, let me just indulge you, Nir, with a couple of things which I thought was interesting in terms of the environment one needs for any kind of innovation. It doesn't really matter whether fintech or anything. So it seems the availability of talent. We spoke about that. Israel has talent. The access to tech infrastructure. Well, it is a tech development hub. Of course, you will have it. But also the ability to drive customer adoption. Now, that I think is very, very interesting and important, because at the end of the day, as I was trying to allude before, whatever you innovate, whatever you come out in terms of disruptive technology, needs to arrive at somebody who not only needs it, but implements it and uses it day after day. How do you make sure there?
So I think that, it's a funny notion to say that Israel is taking care of fintech adoption. I mean, early adoption is not what we excel. It's not something we excel of. If you take a look at the Israeli banking industry, it's not an early adopter at all. The Israeli banking industry is actually quite old and old-fashioned. We see that smart banking in Israel is late to come, is not yet there. And we see that actually a very interesting figure is that 90% of the Israeli technologies, 90 of the Israeli startups, are exporting their solutions. And only 10% of the Israeli startups see Israel as a market. So Israel is not considered to be a market at all, with a population of hardly 9 million citizens. We're not seeing ourselves as a market, and the banking industry is not a market at all, and is not an early adopter, as I said.
Interesting one, if I may interject there, because that also drives very much what you do and where you expand and scale to. That means also every startup, and I want to put the focus now on Equitech Group, on your specific fund, Nir, is the way you choose the individual companies you have in your fund. They need to think big. They need to look at globalization, right?
Right. We look at the growth potential of companies. So basically, if we describe our funnel, okay, in our group, we have the Israeli Fintech Association that is basically our conferences line. This is let's say, the non-profit events line. And this is fine. What we do there is host startups. We host our global partners. We share our stage with different corporates and banking partners that want to be out there. And of course, with different startups that want to be heard. And this is our great funnel to see every month several startups and to generate deal flow. So as I said, we have 750 give or take startups in the field of fintech, in the broad term of the word fintech, working in Israel. And we have mapped them all. We're in touch with the founders, with the CEOs. We know their plans, sometimes from ideation stage. So we know them from baby steps, we support them, we help them to grow. In Equitech Group, we basically take these young startups and we consult them on strategic aspects, on financial aspects. We work with them on go-to-market strategies, on financial planning. We work with them on capital raising strategy and on different product market fit processes. So we help them to maybe reshape their value proposition and to penetrate to different markets. And then when they're ready, of course, and only then, we see an opportunity to include them in our pipeline. And we see an opportunity maybe in the future also to invest in them in their A and B rounds, in their growth stages, when we see that they are already generating revenues. So we have this internal ecosystem around fintech. When we scout for fintech, we see fintech in the rise and support fintech where it goes around the world. We actually have the chance to hear the feedback of the banking partners that these fintechs are integrated in. And we see if they can deliver what they promise to deliver. And only then we join their success.
Yeah, and I wonder, that you were saying that Israel is really an exporting hub when it comes to technology and interesting companies. The integration into the big blue chips such as Apple, Alphabet, Alibaba, the three big A's, just to mention those three. Is it something that you look at when you get into the individual companies at Equitech? Do you say, hey, these are real likely exits I can almost count on? How much does that play into the picture?
So I would say this is something that is considered definitely, but further along the way. We have in our first steps, maybe the initial or the primary thing you're considering is how this technology is going to serve the banking industry. The institutional banking industry, and we want to see if different banks around the globe, even doesn't have to be tier 1 banks, it can be tier 2 or tier 3 banks, if they want to adopt these solutions. And of course, only after a technology has proven itself as a successful in the traditional banking industry or in the traditional insurance industry, I think that only then it's mature enough to penetrate different A-list partners such as these ones.
Okay, Nir, then let's exit our conversation with a final word on what you think in the next 5 years the fintech industry, globally speaking, is going to look like. Also considering what we are going through right now with COVID-19. What is your bet right now?
Oh yes, so first of all, go digital. Digital banking, challenger banks, etc. Is going to bring a dramatic change in banking. So we have different apps, and we saw different apps like N26, for example, in Europe, and different apps that are conquering the world basically in the speed they grow they grow and basically the adoption, the quick adoption of different users of these apps. And we see that digital banking, it saves costs. We don't need to feel that we trust our bank anymore. That's okay if our bank will be a startup. And if the brand will be 3 years old or 4 years old, they won't steal our money. Youngsters, Z generation, they trust in different players, even if they're younger players and even if they're newcomers. And also, of course, we see RegTech and compliance as a very dominant subsegments of fintech. We see that the legislator and the regulation is supporting digital banking, is from one hand allowing it to happen, from the other hand, it saves us and save our money safe.
Yeah, and
It's
complete that picture. You know, if you go there more digital and online, especially with something that is very dear to you, i.e., money or your wealth, you have to have the security. You know, building
right.
an infrastructure up as well. So it's kind of a couple of you know, feeding sectors in the fintech industry, right?
I agree. I fully agree. Cybersecurity will be with us along the way with all these processes. And not to, we have to mention also blockchain. Obviously, you mentioned it before, and it's completely true. Everything that is blockchain based, even if now it sounds a bit experimental, it's not really. This is a reliable infrastructure. And again, let's separate these two conversations. I'm not talking just about blockchain or cryptocurrencies. I'm separating these fields completely. Cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, by the way, tonight is the Bitcoin fourth halving. So we have a split in Bitcoin price.
Yeah, true,
Uh,
true. Liquidity
yeah,
coming back into the picture.
yeah, interesting. Just a side note, but let's take this out of the conversation of blockchain. This is cryptocurrency. It's a whole different world, and of course, it's going to be there. It's going to serve us. Bitcoin is here to stay. Cryptocurrencies are here to stay. But what I'm referring to is blockchain. Blockchain is infrastructure. This will basically lead to a greater security, a greater efficiency in processes, and in a very inherent way, this will create a smoother and seamless operations for banks, fintechs, and for the end users as well.
Well, Nir, thank you so much for living it, sharing it, and mentoring it, all your wisdom about the fintech industry, globally speaking, but especially about Israel, one of the biggest innovation hubs in this particular industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Patricia, for having me.
And thank you, my Mentorit TV community, for taking an interest yet again. More interesting stuff to come. Bye.